Today in Line by Line together with Manuel, we are analyzing the Grudge by Tool. Manuel, why did you pick that song?
So what I definitely like Tool a lot. They have really deep song texts. So yeah, I'm like, why haven't we gone into that yet? But yeah, I feel like this song is setting up well, a problematic relationship with the world, and in the album it's slowly trying to get resolved, or at least processed, right? So this is the problem formulation, and I think it's connected with the meaning crisis also a little bit, right? Like there's this this turning away from tradition and trying to get free. So yeah, and I think they have amazing song text and amazing music as well. So yeah, let's see what we can make of this, because this is heavy stuff.
I also like the video. Guys, check it out. The link is below. Okay. Wear the grudge like a crown of negativity. Calculate what we will or will not tolerate. Desperate to control all and everything. Unable to forgive your scarlet letterman. What do you make of that?
Well, what's a grudge, right? Like, grudge is something you can't let go, right? And so wearing it as a crown of negativity is basically putting it. It's taking it on as your identity, right? It's like, oh, like I'm gonna be the person that is holding a grudge, and I'm gonna live my life that way. So that's opening it up with like a really intense negative vibe. So it's the feeling of being wronged and wanting justice for that. How do you feel about that?
I felt wear the grudge like a crown would be that virtual signaling, maybe, in a sense, representative of it somehow. Like you're signaling how much you begrudge somebody a lot, and how different you are as well. Desperate to control all and everything. So you cannot control some things, so you will try to destroy them. So the rest that remains you can control. Unable to forgive your scarlet letterman. What is scarlet letterman? You have done some reading on it?
Yeah, I've tried. It's really hard, but the scarlet letter is about a woman who got a child that was out of wedlock, right? So the father was unknown, and she got, I think, branded with a letter. So there's this branding, right? Like there's this, well, you can see it as when you're born, right? Like you're being imprinted by your parents, right? Like you're subjected to what they leave you, right? And they brand you with their sin, right? And then the inability to forgive, right, is to not let that wrong doing what you experienced go, and that's the grudge, I guess, that we're talking about, right? Like, and I think it's talking about society as such, not specifically the parents, but I think either would work, right? And then the two lines in between calculate what we will not tolerate, right? This is setting boundaries, right? We want to close the world so that we're living in a place where we feel safe, and that's the control, right? Like the control that we want to have.
Okay, so anything that happened outside societal rules would be branded and later on begrudged. And people who hold this grudge against somebody who broke the societal rules, let's say, would be unforgiven. Yeah, that's heavy.
Well, it takes something from you to forgive, right? And he's choosing to wear the crown of negativity instead of living with forgiveness.
She's like going with that pitchfork, burn them all. They broke the rules. They're different. Yeah.
And then clutch it like a cornerstone, otherwise it all comes down. Justify denials and grip them to the lonesome end. Clutch it like a cornerstone, otherwise it all comes down. Terrified of being wrong, ultimate prison cell. So the cornerstone is the place that was put down in ancient time first, right? Like it was the first break of a building, and then everything was following that, right? And then so everything is dependent on the cornerstone, right? And so if you have your crown of negativity as your cornerstone, right? Like you need to keep that crown on your head, right? Because else everything falls apart. So that's what being talked about. And then in order to do that, you have to justify denials and go to the end, right? Like you have to hold on to the end of the road, but the longer you hold on, right? Like the more you get isolated, right? Like the more untenable your position becomes.
Yeah. So I always thought cornerstone would also represent traditions, maybe 10 amendments or something. And everything that you can kind of see outside of those, new, fresh, would be stepped upon. Otherwise, they would shake the cornerstone. Clutch it like a cornerstone. I think in the video, it also showed the church.
Yeah, I think the cornerstone for the church was the Bible.
Otherwise, it all comes down, terrified of being wrong. Well, why wrong? It's just different. I mean, is the fact that there is only one way to live, and people realize that there are many ways to live, and then they feel they're wrong about thinking you can only follow this straight line instead of like going that way. Terrified of being wrong. Ultimatum, prison cell. Ultimatum. Like, okay, you place an ultimatum, and if the person doesn't follow, it's prison cell as a result. How do you understand that sentence?
Yeah, I was dyslectically reading it as ultimate prison cell, because that seems appropriate to me, right? Because what they're talking about is dogmatism, right? Like being terrified of being wrong is you try to follow things by the letter, right? You're trying to do everything correct, right? So So when you're doing that, right, like you're too tense, right? Like you can't deal with the changes, right? And part of life is being wrong, right? Like you're not always going to be right, because that's impossible. And I think what was represented in the church was the fire and brimstone preaching, right? Like you can't do this because else you're going to hell. So that creates this thing where people are their own prisoner, not prisoner, prison guard, right? Like they're putting themselves in chains to act out the right things, and that's the ultimate prison cell. So that's how I see it. But there's also a sense of, well, maybe that if you're not following the dogma, that you get cast out of the church, right? You're no longer part of the community, right? So there's a sense in being ostracized that also is a prison cell, but it's a different prison cell. Social.
So the person cannot step out of line, otherwise they will be completely thrown out. Okay. Yeah, this is the ultimate way of controlling. Do you think society misses out on freedom, or the way the things are going now, there is too much freedom, for example?
Well, so like I truly believe we need a cornerstone, right?
Mm.
Like we need this thing that we all hold in common and that we build upon. Because if we don't, then we're going to end up in chaos, right? But the cornerstone shouldn't be a tyranny, right? Like it shouldn't be oppressive in a way that's not healthy, right? Like because if you have a cornerstone, right, like it's going to require things of you, right? You can't put your brick somewhere else because like you need to put it in the building, right? So that is a constraint, right? So that's a constraint upon your freedom, right? But by being part of the building, you gain more, right? Like you become part of the community, you become, and that's a difficult dance.
I always thought that cornerstone is the set of values that you possess inside, and they are not necessarily the common values. They are not necessarily the same for everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And I have been taught that as a child. You have your cornerstone inside, your set of beliefs, your mindset. And
Mm-hmm.
remember that it's different. You cannot force others to see the world your way.
Mm-hmm.
You can only find a society which kind of resembles yours and be in that society. I don't know. That's maybe not the way. I mean, I think that's the way artists see the world, actually.
Yep, I agree. That's how artists do it. And artists, they inherently they want more freedom, right? Because they're more exploratory in nature, right? Like they're playing with boundaries, because that's what art is in some sense, right? Like it's discovering what's possible.
Also scientists. Like Einstein was a musician as well. He played the violin. Nobody knows that. Yeah. Brian Cox was in a pretty good rock band before he became a scientist.
I would pay to see Einstein play violin. That would be a sight.
Yeah. Saturn ascends. Choose 1 or 10. Hang on to be humbled again. humbled again. When he says choose 1 or 10, I think it's about commandments. No?
No, this is numerology, right? So the number 1 has special meaning because, well, yeah, like 1 is the building of everything, right? Like, because you need 1 in order to have many, right? So, and then 10 is sometimes considered as the whole, right? So they're kind of like opposites, but they're also the same in some sense, right? Because 10 is 1, 0, right? Like it's just now we're doing the repetition, but 1 up, right? So the choice between that, right, is effectively choosing, and this is what I read, right? Like is between the part or the whole, and then Saturn, and Saturn is going to come back later in the song. Saturn has a rotation around the sun that takes 27 years, and in the 27 years, that is corresponding to the point where your relationship with life starts to change, right? So there's like the ancients had all of these ideas, right? Like that's where your adulthood or whatever, right, was fully coming into being, right? You become a new person with the ascent of Saturn. But the ascent is saying that it's not yet happened, right? But it's going to happen, right? And then choose 1 or 10, right? Like then you're having to make the choice, like who are you going to be as an adult, right? And I think the 1 and the 10 might also be relating to the crown of negativity or forgiveness, right? Like are you going to stay stuck in the grudge, or are you going to find a way to forgiveness?
Why do they repeat hang on or you will be humbled? You will be humbled again.
Well, I think the hanging on is relating to this control, right? And humility, right? Being humbled is literally the loss of control, right? So that's saying the same thing as 1 or 10, right? Like you either can grasp and hold on tight, or you can become something new, right? Like something you're not yet.
Mm-hmm.
So clutch it like a cornerstone, otherwise it all comes down. Justify denials and grip into the lonesome end. Saturn ascends, comes around again. Saturn ascends, the 1, the 10. Ignorance to the damage done. So now we're reframing it in Saturn.
Mm-hmm.
So in some sense, he says, well, we've already had this, right? Like this moment already existed in some sense, and now you're going to face it again.
Justify denials, grieve them to the lonesome end. Okay, so yeah, I think the problem that was begrudged, let's say, it has to be held on because it comes back like Saturn ascends. And ignorant, Saturn ascends, the 1, the 10, ignorant to the damage done. So it will happen again, basically, regardless of the damage.
Well, I see the ignorant of the damage done as a positive aspect, in the sense that you can become aware of the damage, right?
Mhm.
And becoming aware of the damage is the reason to want to change, right? Like if you're like, oh, like I see what wearing the grudge is doing,
Mhm.
then I don't want to be part of that, right? And then you have to become a different person because the person that you are is inevitably doing that damage by living out the grudge.
Okay, so if we would put a spin on it a little bit, it says those people who break outside of the rules, it will come again and again. So you, the rest of people, hold on and remember the mistakes they made, hold where this negativity, keep saying, pointing fingers, bad stuff, bad, like point that negativity at the wrong action, even if you are wrong, keep doing that. So it will not kind of ruin your society somehow. Basically, hold on to the grudge and the society will stay unchanged. And you will always be right. Justify your denials.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I feel like he's balancing between the two, right? Like he's on this point, right, that he sees the choice, right, and he's like, do I pick the one or the other, right? And yeah, like they're like the way I see the grudge is more like original sin, right? So it's like you come into this place, right? And there's all of this bad stuff, right? And like you're just in it, right? Like you didn't choose it, right? Like you didn't have any say over it. And then the question is, well, are you going to be resentful of that, right? Like, are you going to say, well, I didn't deserve that, like, like, or are you going to find a way out?
I also like the idea about Saturn, because it basically says it will come regardless of your actions.
Yeah.
So those movements of the planets, they won't be affected by anything you believe in, by all of your grudges, all of your cornerstones, all of your crowns. It will happen regardless of you. It will bring its damage and it will not care. Or like, that's it.
Oh yeah, I like that. So you think the damage is done by Saturn?
Yeah. I mean, they blame Saturn for influences. Maybe not exactly. Saturn is just something they name. Basically, they blame forces of nature. It will happen. It's natural that there will be outside of the box thinkers whom you will brand with a scarlet letter, basically. People who will break the rules, people who will look further, people who will explore. And it's forces of nature. And if you want to preserve your little straight society, you have to begrudge that and point fingers and shame them so that they would be scared next time. I kind of deep inside think he's judging that sort of action.
Yeah, no, like there's a lot going on there.
Yeah.
Wear the grudge like a crown, desperate to control, unable to forgive, and sinking deeper.
Oh, he's definitely judging them. And basically calling out a society for sinking deeper. unable to forgive. Is hold on, is the ability to forgive a sign of maturity of the society? Also, forgive what? Right?
Yeah, exactly, right? Like it's important, right? Like you need to have boundaries somewhere, right? So the question, right? Like I think the control aspect, right? That is where the problem lies, right? So if you're trying to control things that you cannot control, right? Because they're forces of nature effectively, then you're gonna end up imposing harm, unnecessary harm. So there's this dance, right? But you can also not impose anything, because then you get chaos, right? And I think the sinking deeper is talking about, well, if you're on the path of control, right? And you see this with authoritarian regimes, right? Like you have to go extremer, in order for you to keep up what you're doing, right? And that's, so you have to sink deeper because you're on the slippery slope. Yeah.
Defining, confining, and sinking deeper. Controlling, defining, and we are sinking deeper. Yeah, that's the control. The more we are unforgiven, the more we are judging, the more we kind of put everything in kind of little boxes, the deeper we sink as a society.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to control everything. So basically, if you would imagine that absolutely horrible society where everybody has to live according to the rules like a little robot, the society would be sinking deeper. Somehow it would become this not prosperous, ever growing society, but it will go out.
I think he's also describing a pattern, right? So defining is stating what's right and wrong, what he was talking about, right? And then confining is saying, well, we have to stay within the lines that we just defined. And then because people are not going to do that ever, then you need to control, right? And so now we created this new reality, right? Because now everybody's going to adapt to the situation. And then we go back to defining, because now there's new problems, right? Like now there's other ways in which people are outside of what we want them to do, and we go back to new confinements and new controlling, and you see the place left to stand and to move just becomes smaller and smaller and smaller, and that's the sinking of society that he's talking about.
Mm-hmm. So Saturn comes back around to show you everything. Lets you choose what you will and will not see, and then drags you down like a stone or lifts you up again, splits you out like a child, light and innocent.
Yeah.
So Saturn is that thing that brings change, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And
so yeah,
it comes now and then.
Mm-hmm.
It makes you wanna see if you like it, and to see if society can go that direction. Mm-hmm. It will either drag you down or lift you up. Yeah, what did you think?
Yeah, I was just realizing that I connected Saturn to becoming mature, but I think it's more accurate to say that it's spiritual awakening, right? And so becoming aware of the spiritual dimension of the world, right, is the thing that lifts the veil, right? Like it allows you to see, oh, right, like we're not doing what we think we're doing. We're actually doing this thinking motion, right? And having that awareness, right, like having that realization, you can call it black pill, right? Like there's all of these names for it. Allows you to choose, right? Like now it's like, okay, what is your response going to be, right? Like is this is a moment of change, and you can fall under the weight, right? So you have all of these incels or whatever, right? Like there's all of these people who take on a victim mentality, right? It's like, oh, I've been oppressed by this, and I don't have any power to do anything about it. Or, right, like you find your personal solution, right? You find your way to manifest change for yourself and hopefully also the people around you. And that spiritual awakening spits you out like a child, light and innocent. Right? Like that's the getting rid of the crown, the burden of the crown.
Okay, now let me put a spin on it from Google. Saturn is about maturity, responsibility, discipline, and stewardship. Some call it the taskmaster of the planets, keeping everyone in check and ensuring direct routes to the finish line. Saturn also has a lot to do with learning lessons and understanding your limitations. Completely not what I thought. I projected freedom onto Saturn and new kind of, I'm not good with astrology, so I didn't know.
No, but I think you're right, actually, right? Because knowing your limitations gives you freedom, right? If you say I can't do this, right? Like I can't run through this wall, then you stop running into the wall, and that gives you freedom, right? Like now you're not. So there is freedom in recognizing these constraints.
Mm-hmm. Like if you know your limitations, you know how to act, basically.
Right.
Somehow.
Saturn comes back around, lifts you up like a child, or drags you down like a stone, to consume you till you choose to let it go. Choose to let this go. So that speaks to me of like the realization, right, of your limitations is going to be this burden, right? Like it's going to eat at you, right? And you can push it away, right? You can try and avoid it, right? But it will find ways to come back in different forms, and it will just be a burden to you until you resolve it, right? And the resolution is not an actually fixing the problem, right? Like the resolution is in accepting the limitation and making the best within it.
I think when Saturn comes with new kind of limitations and sets of rules, Saturn says, drop the old ones. Remember the crown and the grudge where you were angry about a mystery woman and you burned her at the stake back in the day? Let it go. You have a new enemy to fight now. Otherwise you will drown. So keep dropping all those hate crowns that you wore on your head. If you will drop all of them, you will be completely free and light. But Saturn comes back around and gives you a wave of new local outrage. Like, so apparently those limitations that Saturn brings, so he brings the wave of the enemy. like, yeah, I think the first idea, virtue signaling, was right. Like everybody got really upset about something and they canceled the shit ton of people because of that. And people kept remembering it. But then imagine in 10 years, there will be a new thing, not even in 27, Saturn ascends. But the time passes by, it will bring new limitation, which you can see as your cornerstone and wear it on your head. New public outrage thingy.
So I think this song is doing something really nice, because it's taking this Saturn is usually related to the personal aspect, right? But it's also talking about the societal aspect at the same time, right? So it's showing that this pattern of having grudges and whatever also manifests in the group, and maybe the speed of Saturn is different for groups than it is for people. So.
Give away the stone. Let the oceans take and transmutate this cold and fated anchor. Give away the stone. Let the waters kiss and transmutate these leaden grudges into gold. Let go.
Lead. Yeah.
What is leaden grudges? I have to Google.
Lead, like that's the metal, lead, right?
Okay.
So that's the heavy, useless. Well, it's not completely useless, but it's valueless, right? So, and I think this is also referencing alchemy, right? Where you're trying to change lead into gold. So yeah, the grudges are all of these, and lead is also weighty, right? So that's referencing back to the anchor, right? So the lead is the thing that holds you down, and then you want to transform these things that hold you down into things that lift you up, right? Like, because when you have an experience, right, you curse it initially because it hurts, or you're affected negatively by it, right? But later on, it's a valuable life experience, and it allows you to mature in ways that you can't without that experience, right? And that's the lead into gold.
I also like the idea that that stone is the anchor. You will not go far. You will just stay in the same place. The moment you let go of the anchor, your ship can sail somewhere. Like, I like that idea.
Yeah, so the way I think about that is it's bootstrapping, right? So the cornerstone is basically saying, okay, we're going to build the house here, right? But like, if you've built the house, right, you can say, well, now I want to build a kitchen here because that's what's needed, right? So instead of going by the plans of the house, you go by the needs in the moment, right? And now you're changing from dogmatism, right? Like this is the blueprint. You change to relating to the requirements of the world, and I think that's letting the anchor go, right? Like the blueprints were important to get the house built, but now it's my house, and now I need to decide what happens within the house.
I think oceans also represent chaos, like the unknown. And he said, like, if you will let these beliefs go, just let it go, see what the unknown will do to it, see how it will change, transmutate. And it almost endearing, like it's the first time words like kiss in the song. Let the waters kiss it.
Mm.
So like that cornerstone is heavy and unloved, but the moment you set it free, it's so the first time it's loved somehow in that freedom.
Yeah.
I think the society might flourish with a little bit more, less outrage, less finger pointing, a little bit more understanding and freedom. It's weird, but the people are fighting for freedom with such outrage, and they don't see that they themselves put limitations on others to believe in the things they believe.
Yeah, I like this noticing of the kiss, right? Because the kiss is definitely pointing at a change in the relationship, right?
Yeah.
Like now it's affectionate, right? Like now it's cherishing, right? So there's this implication that if we cherish the lad, the cherishing aspect will make it golden to us, right? So it's pointing at that the nature of these things are a consequence of how we are relating to it, right? Like if we're affectionate, if we're looking at the good in them, we can relate to the good parts of them. And if we hold on to the grudge, then we can only relate to the bad aspects. And yeah, right, like you said, right? Like if we're making boundaries for other people and we're confining them and we're controlling them, then yeah, that's sad, right? And that's also an imposition upon yourself, right? Because now you have to be the policeman. Now you have to.
I also want to mention that lead for me associates with poisoning, like lead poisoning. And gold is, if I'm not mistaken, I will Google that, hashtag Google, that gold is twice as heavy than lead. Let me Google it. 19.3. Can you check it for lead, because I can't find it.
Oh.
It should be twice. I saw it somewhere that like a little brick of gold is twice heavier than lead.
Yeah, it's almost not twice, but like 1.8.
Okay, so just to have it on recording that I was right. Again,
It's about the density of gold is 1.8 times the density of lead.
almost twice as much.
Almost, yes.
Yes, I was right. let me feel so good about it.
Which is surprising to me. Not that you're right, but that's true.
Yeah, I mean, I have checked it before. I have seen one of the curiosities about gold was that that they always say, "Oh, look, in those pirate movies, pirates carry full bags of gold." And in reality, if those bags were filled with actual pure gold coins, they would not lift it up. Like one small bag of gold coins is like super heavy. Manuel, what did you learn from that song, except that I was right on gold issue?
Well, I definitely learned that I need to have more respect for your chemical knowledge. And yeah, it's interesting. A criticism against society, because that's the way I was stepping into it. I was like, well, this is a grudge against society, right? Like this is his grudge against society, and like he needs to let go as well, right? Like there there's also a resolution that he needs to make, and I think that's what the album is kind of about, right? And yeah, I found it a really beautiful way to point out these things, right? Like these forces of nature, effectively, that we're subjected to, right? Like these are going to impose upon us in some way, and we're going to impose them on ourselves in some way, and we need to deal with that.
Yeah. Well, I learned that if you let go of grudges, will be lighter and we will be able to move on. And forgiveness is a big thing out of it. Yeah. I'm very happy to have analyzed that song. Thank you, Manuel. Thank you, everyone. Please check out Manuel's podcast. I will provide the links below. And enjoy the gifts of our sponsor, Free Time.
Bye.
If that anchor would have been made of gold, Jesus, that house would not sail away. House on sails.
That's a new song. Sail away, sail away.
House on sail. It's like, it's so weird, like the connections brain make.